Yeah, that name can be a mouthful. Okay. Well, good morning again. Well, another feast is almost over. I hope it was a good one for you. Several years ago, after doing a funeral service, a teenager came up to me and asked, how can I know which religion is right? How can I know if Islam isn't correct? Or maybe Hindu or Buddhist? Or maybe I should be nothing at all? How can I know what is right? Well, I responded immediately. Well, that's easy. All you got to do is go get yourself a Bible and a history book and turn to the book of Daniel and read the prophecies of Daniel and see where they came to pass in history. No other religion can do that. Only the God of the Bible can tell you exactly what will happen centuries before it does, naming people, places, and empires. And that gave him a good place to start. So if you ever begin to doubt what you believe is true, just take another look at Daniel. Because you can read through that and you can see all these prophecies, especially in chapter 2 and in chapter 7, chapter 8, and the best part of chapter 11. You can see where all these prophecies came to pass in history. You know, in Daniel 9:25, Gabriel tells Daniel that there will be 69 weeks, or as we know, 483 years, from the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah. And that first command was given to Nehemiah, the 2nd chapter, in the month of Nisan. The scholars should have known when their Messiah was to come on the scene and who he was. But they were so filled with jealousy, envy, and hate that they murdered him in the first month after the 69 weeks on the 14th of Nisan. All they had to do was look at the prophecy and say the 69 weeks are over. Messiah is to be cut off. I wonder who that is. You think they knew? There was only one miracle worker on the scene. Prophecy is a wonderful tool to help us stay grounded in the truth and to know that God is in control. Where are we today in Bible prophecy? I'm going to take a little different slant on this as we go through this. Matthew chapter 24 and in verse 32. He says, now learn this parable from the fig tree. When his branches already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. That is the generation that sees these things. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Only the Father knows when it will happen. But some will say, well, yeah, that was then, but Jesus was in the flesh, but now he knows. And they will turn to Matthew chapter 28. And in verse 18, and they will say, Jesus came and spoke to them and saying, all power or all authority has been given to me in heaven and in earth. Yes, but with some exceptions. All doesn't always mean all. Acts chapter 1 and in verse 6. says, therefore, when they had come together, they asked him, saying, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? And he said to them, it is not for you to know the times and the seasons which the Father has put in his own authority. Only the Father knows. The things that Jesus spoke about in Matthew 24 and the time of the setting up of the kingdom of God on earth are in the Father's authority, not Jesus. God the Father will decide when it is time. Jesus doesn't know. Revelation chapter 5. Revelation chapter 5 and verse 1 says, and I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the scroll and to loose its seals? And no one in heaven or on the earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or look at it. So I wept much, because no one was found worthy to open and to read the scroll or to look at it. But one of the elders said to me, do not weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll and loose its 7 seals. And I looked, and behold, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 living creatures, and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb, as though it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. This is where we are in Bible prophecy. Verse 7 has not happened yet. Then he came and took the scroll out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne. Our Father will decide when everything is ready according to his plan. Right now, that scroll, with all the end-time events that are written on it, is still sealed, and it is still in the Father's hand. When the time is right, and all the players are on the stage, he will hold out his hand. And Christ will walk over and take the scroll out of his hand. And after a brief ceremony, he will open the first seal. Chapter 6 and verse 1 says, now I saw when the Lamb opened the seals, one of the seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying with a voice like thunder, come and see. And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. The first thing to happen, the beast will come to power. And that false prophet, who we, of course, assume will be the Pope, the great false prophet. The false prophet is the false prophet of the false God. The false prophet doesn't stand up and say, I'm God. None of the prophets of Baal ever stood up and said, I'm Baal. That's not the purpose. The false prophet is the false prophet of the false God. His job is to deceive the whole world to worship the first beast. And when that begins to take place, we will be at Daniel 11:40. We are not there yet. There remains a lot to happen. It can happen quickly, or it can take years. It took 10 years for us to get from Saddam Hussein to where we are today in Iraq. Is ISIS going to be the power that will become the king of the South? Or will it force the rest of the Arab nations to unite and to align themselves to fight ISIS? It remains to be seen. We don't know. But things are changing and have been changing. God has allowed these things to happen. Because if Saddam Hussein was still in power, there would be no ISIS, there would be no nuclear Iran. For these events to take place, we had to get involved, and he had to be taken out of the scene. Other things that we don't even think about have got to happen yet for all these things to fall into place. I'd like to pose a question to you. You know, we have always believed and taught for years that the 3.5 years of the beast and the 3.5 years of the two witnesses are the same 3.5 years. We assume that, but are they? I just want to give you some food for thought. It is also recorded as 42 months. Are the 42 months the same? It is also recorded as 1,260 days. Are the 1,260 days the same? No, they're not. I will give power to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days. And at the end of their testimony, at the end of the 1,260 days, the beast will kill them, and their dead bodies will lie in the streets for at least 3.5 days. While the beast continues to do what he's doing, and there's a worldwide party celebration because they're dead. So the 1,260 days can't be exactly the same. There's an overlap. And when the trumpet sounds and the two witnesses and the rest of us rise to meet Christ in the air, there's the time of the pouring out of the 7 last plagues, which may take into account the 30 to 75 days at the end of Daniel 12. So now the 42 months may not be the same. How much of an overlap is there? The point is, if we don't ask the right question, we're not even looking for the right answer. We may be in for some surprises if we don't keep an open mind. There are things that we don't know yet. But the things that we do know, and we have proven, like the sure word of prophecy of the things in Daniel that have taken place, and history has proven it. We can hold on to those things, and they will help us to hold fast to the truth and remember that God is in control. Nothing is going to happen unless he allows it. Now, Jesus gave us an assignment. He said, watch and pray that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things and to stand before him. He also said, occupy till I come. He didn't say, go find a cave somewhere and wait. He said, keep working. Live your life. And do those things that are pleasing in his sight, because his eyes and his ears are on the righteous. I believe that we are in the beginning of sorrows, the beginning of birth pangs. But as anyone who has gone into labor knows, those pains can last a long time, or at least it sure seems like it. But the analogy is there. At first, it's just a twinge, but as time goes on, the pain gets worse. And this pain will lead to tribulation. Have you all been keeping informed, keeping up to date by checking out the Garnett Armstrong website with all the news events? You know, they have a lot of different news sources that they use to gather information that pertain to prophecy. Wars and rumors of wars, you know, it's in the news. But you can get a lot of details that you don't hear on the news when you check out all these different news sources on the website. You know, Russia and Ukraine. But what that is doing is forcing Europe to make some decisions, some hard decisions about what they're going to do about themselves, which eventually is going to lead to a new alignment in Europe. And of course, you know, that's all that's on the news is ISIS this and ISIS that. And what is going to happen with ISIS? What are they going to do? Whatever happens, it will lead to the formation of the King of the South. And those are the things that we're looking for in the future. And of course, who hasn't heard about Ebola? Unheard of in this country until a few weeks ago. If you caught the news this morning, the World Health Organization says they expect 10,000 new cases of Ebola every week. Now, how do they plan that? How do they figure that? What do they know that we don't know? That should get your attention. Wars, rumors of wars, pestilence, earthquakes, drought, famines. That was on the news again. Today was the drought out west. Several states are facing severe water shortages. Colorado River is drying up. Lakes all over California are drying up. Lake Mead is drying up so fast, they are now digging a fourth tunnel down below the first, second, and third tunnel because the pumps they put in to get the water out have gone dry because the water level has dropped below the other three tunnels that they already dug. They said this morning that one of the lakes that provides the main water source for some of these upscale communities in California will be dry within a year if something isn't done. They don't get some rain. They show one guy, he already dug up all his grass and put down artificial turf because the grass is all dead. God's hand of protection has been taken away. And you either are with God or you're on your own. And when it seems like this is it, sometimes the labor pains stop. Sometimes it's false labor. Sometimes it looks like it will all begin in weeks, but God says, not yet. The end is not yet. For there will be tribulation followed by great tribulation. There is past prophecy, things that were prophesied to happen and did, as again recorded in Daniel, the various empires. You can go through like chapter 11 where he names the empires. That after Babylon there will be the Macedonian, the Persian Empire, and then the Macedonian Empire, and then the Roman Empire, and he even names people, places, things. You can go through with a history book and you can see all these things happen. And there's prophecy that is future. It hasn't happened yet. And there may be things that we just don't know. We know the big picture, the main prophecies, but the little picture, the many smaller prophecies, and the many events inside those prophecies, we will understand as we get closer and closer to them. But nothing will happen unless God allows it. He is in control. Jesus Christ begins it all by opening the first seal. It's not going to happen until he does it. Who's in control? God is in control. It's in his hand. We get concerned and worried and upset over end-time events, and it's in God's hand. It can't even happen until he decides he's going to open the first seal. We are his children. God will take care of us. We can prepare as best we can as we see the day approaching. But the main thing that you can do is to maintain and improve your relationship with God. That is our first priority. Revelation chapter 12. Revelation chapter 12 and verse 10 says, "Then I heard a voice saying in heaven, now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren, who accused them before our God day and night, has been cast down." And one of the things that's going to happen during these events is Satan is going to be cast out of heaven for the last time. When he was cast out originally, he was allowed back. He has access to God's throne, as we read about in first two chapters of Job, to be the accuser of the brethren. He's the one that goes up there and points his finger at us every time we make a mistake. But he's going to be cast out and cast back down here to the earth, and when he does, he knows he only has a short time. And he's going to be after us. But what does the word tell us? Verse 11, "And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death." God the Father and Jesus Christ come first. Or you're on your own. Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6 and verse 30. "Now if God has so clothed the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For after all these things the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble." God is in control. If you ever doubt that, just go back and read the book of Daniel again and see how God said what he said hundreds of years before it happened and then brought it to pass. You cannot accomplish anything by worrying. What you can do, do. What you cannot control is in God's hands. We need to trust him and put our faith in him. You know, Jesus said when he returns, he said, will I really find faith on the earth? Well, there was a night when the disciples were in a boat and Jesus came walking on the water. And at first they thought, you know, it was some kind of apparition. They weren't sure what they were seeing. And Jesus spoke to them. Said, "It's me, don't worry." And Peter said, "Well, Lord, if it's you, bid me come on to the water." So he said, "Come." And Peter, in the middle of the lake, in the middle of the night, in the middle of a storm, stepped out of a boat and walked on water. And when he realized what was going on around him, He took his mind off of Christ and began to sink and cried out for help. And Jesus said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" Don't take your mind off of Christ. Don't let all these things going on in the world take your mind off of him, because that's exactly what Satan wants. Get worried, get upset, get concerned about everything going on around you, and forget about God. Don't take your mind off of Christ. So I ask this question, if you've ever thought about it. If a little faith can walk on water, how much faith do we have? Anyone up for a walk on the lake?